Good morning, everybody. And so we come to our presentation today, which is going to be about software as a service, data risks and compliance. We have Stephen Thomas, who's the Chief Risk Officer for SIGRA, who will be talking about SaaSAssure today. I think I've got that right, have I, Stephen? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I've been in the risk world for a long time, Tarquin. I'm not the chief risk officer, but certainly am a
Sorry,
CISSP.
revenue officer. My mistake. Chief revenue.
If you guys want to dig in deep on particular controls frameworks or any particular controls or FAIR, we can do that at a later date, but not probably today.
That is definitely a Freudian slip on my part. I apologize. But Stephen, I will hand it over to you. Everybody really enjoyed this. Should be a good presentation.
Great. Well, happy day, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here, and we'll try and make this as enjoyable of a conversation as we possibly can for you. So thank you to Tarquin and the SASIG team here for sharing part of your day with me. I believe, Tarquin, will you confirm that you can see my screen?
I can see your screen, Stephen.
Great. So first and foremost, hi, everybody. Stephen Thomas from lovely Austin, Texas. It's a little early this morning. As I mentioned earlier, I have a daughter who's there in Edinburgh for her semester abroad. So it's wonderful to be speaking with all of you this morning. We do have offices in the London area. Our head of EMEA is Neil Monday, and Neil is traveling today and not immediately available for this presentation. Thus, I got the early wake-up call and the coffee here in Austin, Texas today to come talk to you and the team. So today we're going to be talking really about SaaS applications and SaaS data and some of the gaps that we see occurring in the marketplace. This is going to be hopefully an educational conversation, an awareness one. So again, if you have questions, please feel free, jump in, share your comments and feedback. And at that, we'll go ahead and jump in here. And I'm sure, I don't have here a poll button, but I imagine that most of you are intimately familiar with the shared responsibility model, the concept of which, alludes to the fact that you've got a platform availability model from your SaaS providers. And that's aligned with, Amazon Web Services, who really built and created kind of the concept of the shared responsibility model and the concept that you are responsible then as the end customer for the data that you put into said platform. Again, SaaS provider, infrastructure as a service provider, is responsible for the uptime associated with that platform, and you, the end customer of that, is responsible for the data that you put into that platform. Now, this not only applies to your infrastructure as a service platforms, but this also applies very specifically to the software as a service applications that you might be using. And that's really where that 60% comes from. And alerting organizations to the fact that whether they're using a Salesforce.com or maybe a ServiceNow, that those platforms are not responsible for protecting the data that you're putting into those platforms. And one of the things that we work hard to highlight, both with our end customers, but as well as our audit community and the compliance community. And you could think of GDPR, you've got the UK Data Protection Act of 2018, you've got PCI DSS here in the US, CCPA, all of the wonderful acronyms associated with compliance, but those are core regulatory risks associated for businesses around SaaS data. And when you think about, I'll give you maybe a brief fun example here that happened in the North American market not that long ago to a group of car dealerships. There's a platform called CDK here in the North American market that simply was offline for 17 days. And so business continuity and that core data protection component as it relates to your business and your auditor and your compliancy is part of your responsibility as the end customer and the information security and information technology team and organization inside of your business. And what we often find is the IT organization, again, is not always aware of the particular SaaS applications that a company might be using. The credit card and the ease of purchase, as we all know, has made that a pretty straightforward proposition from an acquisition perspective. And we highlight this in part, and I think you all are probably well aware of this, but it strikes me from some of the data we see from IDC and Gartner. This is one of our fun questions that we like to ask when we're out engaging with teams, is how many of those core applications, right, our legacy applications are moving to SaaS by the end of 2025. And that's 85% of those applications are moving to SaaS based. And so we often, again, talk about kind of the basics of the assessment of what are the SaaS applications that you have in that environment. Are you or do you have a way to actively manage the SaaS estate that's growing inside of that environment? And this is a good example of that. And so if we think of the average kind of mid-market company, and again, this is one of those numbers that always kind of catches me, but the average number of SaaS applications is about 137. It's about 9 SaaS applications per employee. And people often go, it can't be 137. But if you think about maybe a simple example here that I'll give everyone, think about a tool like Canva. And Canva is a SaaS application that obviously helps you from a marketing perspective create slides. But we've seen it here in markets where finance teams use Canva to create their financial quarterly review documents. And so they're transferring what is highly sensitive data out of kind of your classic corporate information and in the information security world that you control as the end customer into a highly unregulated marketing environment like a Canva that simply makes that information accessible to almost everyone. And as Tarquin mentioned earlier, he got AI in before I think anybody else could, and I'm sure some of you are going, "Oh no, what's this going to be about?" But we've all seen the challenges that uploading data into AI models, large language models, presents to businesses and companies. So again, just something to pay attention to. And the don't know aspect, so the fact that many people are simply unaware of how many SaaS applications their teams are using, it continues to grow in a significant way. And on the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the different segments of applications. Obviously, productivity would be your classic Microsoft 365s, your Google Workspaces, all the way through kind of your sales with your Salesforce.coms, your HubSpots, Sugar CRMs, things of that nature, through to customer service and the different applications, HR even with your Bamboo HRs, your ADPs, et cetera, that offer those services out to different entities. And the reason that we highlight all of this is kind of the ongoing, what we would call kind of pervasive risk associated with the SaaS, broadly SaaS application set. And the internal threat being really that core leader. And I like to say the internal threat is associated with really 2 things. One is malicious. Your classic, you have a controller, financial individual who may not have been offboarded correctly from, say, your instance of Sage, or if you're a smaller business, maybe you're operating QuickBooks, and they come in and they simply decide to impact that data set, whether that's malicious deletion, whether it's ransomware attack, whatever it might be. But again, that core impact is often happen. The second there is the one that I call the Stephen Thomas, and that's the accidental deletion or account closure component. And I think people often forget that with regards to, say, HubSpot or a Salesforce.com, if you've got a head of revenue in an organization that you're operating that may have administrative access to your CRM platform, maybe they have inappropriate access for whatever reason to an ERP platform that you're operating. But if I, inside of, say, HubSpot today, so we use HubSpot as an organization here at SaaSAssure, if I go to HubSpot today, the ease of integration of new capabilities is rampant. And I can go to the marketplace and integrate new capabilities into my HubSpot or our HubSpot instance on a regular basis. And the example I give often is, look, those are new, often untested applications at depth. And suddenly, if I change everyone's first name into Pat after I've integrated a new application, how do I get back to recovering that data set? So that's really what we want you as the IT and information security teams operating in your environments to be accountable for and paying attention to, right? Helping guide your heads of revenue, your marketing teams, your financial teams to be thoughtful about the integrations that they might deploy without your knowledge, as really the information security experts in the room. And you can see a couple of nuggets here with regards to the number of or the increase in attacks that we're seeing. And for those of you that have been in the information security industry for some time, you're familiar with the concept of the honeypot. And the reality is that we're seeing this honeypot mentality with the new realm of SaaS applications. Again, go back to your core CRMs, go to your HR applications that are now SaaS-based. If you have some credential theft that might occur, suddenly you risk the broader data that's being put into that organization. So something to pay attention to and really go in and be thoughtful about as you engage with your teams. Now, this is kind of a fun one. And again, we won't take the full hour today, but one of the things that I do want to highlight for everyone is we have out on SaaSassure.com the terms of service for what are often the most regularly used SaaS applications in those environments. And again, if anyone has a question, please pop in here. As Tarquin mentioned in the chat, this is it's always less enjoyable when it's me just talking at you for the solid 30 minutes here. But in the concept of the question, isn't your SaaS data protected? What we would advocate for is for you to take time to actually go look at the terms of service associated with the SaaS applications that you're leveraging today if you have this question. And as I mentioned on SaaSassure.com, we've done a pretty reasonable job of just simply highlighting those terms of service and where the information is shared that, again, you as the end user, or if you're working as a partner, helping manage technology for different companies, you can go review what those terms of service say. And again, this is where that shared responsibility concept comes in. And whether it's Microsoft, QuickBooks, ServiceNow, Atlassian with Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, your GitHubs, all of those say that they're accountable and responsible for the platform. And therefore, they're going to continue to deliver that platform, and they're accountable to delivering the uptime associated with that platform. But they're not responsible for the data that you as the end customer put into the platform. And that's really where we want you as a community to be thinking about or adding SaaS into your conversation around business continuity, around your core backup and data protection schema. Many of you have this in play around things like onboarding and offboarding. But a number of organizations aren't even thinking today about, SaaS applications, much like you might be thinking about infrastructure as a service and things like cloud security posture management. The same should hold true for your SaaS applications and how the data is being used inside of those. So
Stephen,
let's take
Stephen, can I just ask you a quick question?
Sure, Tarquin.
You talked about going through your terms and agreements, and obviously when you're signing up for a service,
yep,
we're all encouraged to do that. But these terms and conditions are pretty massive in the main. So how easy is it to find the relevant bits that you need to find amongst all the other legalese that's written into them? And how easy is it to understand what's written in them without having to go to a lawyer?
It's not easy, is the answer, Tarquin. And thank you for the question. What we've tried to do with regards to the SaaSassure.com is really distinguish where are those components of the terms of service. So we've actually pulled those out explicitly for our end customers so that you've got visibility to exactly where those are. But that's something, again, as part of your supply chain review and inspection that you as the information security team need to be inspecting. Or if you're going to onboard new applications, you need to be evaluating or having this component of evaluation be part of your onboarding process. Oftentimes, as we go, or some of our partners that do security assessments, Tarquin, go into organizations, they lead with a simple assessment of what are the SaaS applications that are there, and then they prioritize those from a data perspective. So again, as you know, obviously Microsoft 365 for a number of your users or a number of the people out here are critical. Your financial applications, your Sages, your QuickBooks, your CRM applications, right? That you may be operating, billing, and other items out. And then really attacking your core prioritized applications as compared to saying, I'm going to go try and solve for all 137 applications initially. And that's how we would approach it, Tarquin. It was evaluating the terms of service for your prioritized SaaS applications and then working through the rest of the SaaS estate inside of the environment.
Brilliant.
Dr. Bosch had a question here. Let me see. So hold data in different geographic terms of service. So oftentimes not. So this is one of the things that we talk about, Dr. Bosch, is data sovereignty. And so often you'll find many of the core, the larger applications, again, a Sage is a good example of this, Microsoft 365, will meet your GDPR requirements and have your SaaS data located in the particular geolocation that's appropriate associated with that environment. And so you do have it's not really a selection component of where you can store that data. They do that by default to meet GDPR requirements, but it is one of those questions for your smaller vendors or less known vendors that may be local and delivering maybe a unique SaaS application, say for a specific healthcare provider or a state agency that you would want to evaluate. And let me read, we've got one other quick question, everyone, from Chris, and that's, are there observations around increased use of SaaS and in stale accounts? Yes. So this is where we talk about that SaaS assessment, Chris. There are tools out there today on the security side of the house, and then if you could even think about the rise in compliance automation as an example here that really help with the classical onboarding and offboarding. But oftentimes, Chris, what we see is that addresses your single sign-on applications. So your big applications, right? Your ServiceNows, your Atlassians, your Microsoft 365s. What that does fail to achieve, though, often is evaluation of those secondary applications, or what we might call your edge SaaS applications. Again, if someone might be using a Canva, or if they're using a personal DocuSign or Box, something of that nature, that's kind of a real mixed bag. And forgive a shout out for a good friend of mine, but there's a gentleman by the name of Raphael Loos who runs a podcast called Down the Security Rabbit Hole, and he and Jason Clark just did a interview about this very problem specific to OneDrive. And it's the classic OneDrive commentary of, imagine across thousands of users the data and the data types that are stored in OneDrive. And if one of those credentials for, say, a senior executive were compromised, the risk that might be created for that broader organization. So again, this is a real problem that we're asking you as the information security team to be engaging in. And again, our tooling here that is SaaSAssure, we're more focused on the data protection and the business continuity side associated with SaaS, but you do have a number of other tools, security applications that are sprouting up to help you manage your SaaS estate more broadly. But thanks for the questions, everyone, and please keep them coming. So let's keep on going here in the vein of just an example SaaS data protection journey. And I'm sure many of you, if you're in the information technology world, if you're in the information security world, you're obviously familiar with Microsoft 365. And many of you, your information technology teams are providing data protection for Microsoft 365. A number of the large backup applications out there in the market today deliver that protection for Microsoft 365 today. And that's really what has helped establish the gap in business continuity and data protection for SaaS applications. But what I wanted to highlight in the middle here are kind of those secondary, again, edge or core SaaS applications that might be used by a small, medium business. You know, your QuickBooks, your Bamboo HRs, which contain all of your PII, you know, in general identifiable information, your HubSpots or Salesforce.coms, and again, Dropbox, OneDrive, DocuSign, all creating those secondary data sets. And if you've got a finance team, I'm sure if any of you guys are operating off of a Windows box, you're familiar with the fact that you can have, you know, your WhatsApp chat simply running in the background. And again, those conversations are often impacted through your compliancy and continuity requirements and simply aren't being attended to by the IT or information security teams. And as that journey progresses, one of the things that we are, again, as kind of advocates for, you know, SaaS management and SaaS data protection broadly, are seeing is the secondary set of applications. So, you know, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the concept of DevSecOps, what's happening in the application security space right now. You know, that's a place where we're seeing, again, these same terms of service impact core platforms. I'll give an example, and if you guys, maybe if you could, if you use, or if anyone is out there using Jira or Confluence, if you know, just say a yes into your chat bar for me, that'd be great. We're an active Jira user, you know, here, and this is one of those components that Atlassian's terms of service are, again, very direct in saying that they provide the platform, they don't provide protection for the data. And so if you're actively using Jira as an end customer, and suddenly, let's say you have a project manager who leaves, you have a project manager who you fire and you don't offboard quickly. You know, those projects and in the way in which your dev teams are probably using Jira from a project management perspective, if you were to lose a core set of projects, you set that dev team back pretty significantly. And so again, that direct impact is right there in front of us. And so it's not just kind of the core operating business apps. We want you to be thinking as well about those line of business apps. So again, what is the, you know, your development team leveraging? You know, think same terms of service challenges exist with Bitbucket, with GitHub, a number of your other core kind of, you know, development platforms as well. So just something for you as an, you know, information security leader in your business to be paying attention to. All right, well, let's keep going here. So, you know, I'm going to kind of wrap up some commentary here with, you know, what we do very, very briefly. We are a product called SaaSAssure, which is a multi-tenant platform. We're just a simple consumption-based data protection platform for your SaaS applications. And so what we do is we simply deliver a platform that allows you to extract the data in an automated way, just like you would run a standard backup on an on-premise database or an on-premise system. Capture that data, store it securely, and allow for it to be recovered. The data management component, we allow for 5 to 7 years of retention, so mapping to those desired compliance outcomes. I'll share some of the applications that we support, maybe to get the mental juices flowing for all of you. But really, we've designed a very flexible, easy to use platform that you can leverage for your own organization. One of the things here, and Dr. Bosch, I think, asked the question earlier, which is about data sovereignty or where that storage location is. And that's an important component as you're thinking about protecting SaaS data. Data sovereignty and the fact of two components. One, with our platform, you can pick a location. That can be AWS in the UK as an example, where our region exists for our platform, or we can target local storage, local object storage. If you want to retain that in your own data center in a hybrid model, for an example, where you want to make sure that you've got your CRM data not only located in the cloud, but also then available locally to you as well. So should something happen. And I'd call out one of the interesting things that we see out in the market today. We've got a couple of partners that do this work, but is the concept of data migration from one SaaS application to another. And so we're, again, advocates for you having a copy of whatever SaaS data, SaaS application that you're leveraging, So if that account closure might happen, if that particular organization say their funding runs out, right? We're not in a happy venture capital time right now. If a company loses funding and they cease operations, how do you capture that data and then migrate it to a new platform? So again, these are questions that as you build your business continuity and data protection plans that you should be asking as an information security leader. And so an example of the applications that SaaSAssure supports, you've got your classic Microsoft 365s, your CRMs, but I'd again pay attention to a couple of the areas that are maybe less known or thought about, and that's your accounting and HR applications. So thinking about your ADPs, your Bamboo HRs, all the way to your DevOps and service management components, where you're thinking about a ServiceNow or a Freshdesk, and into DevOps world with your your GitHubs, your Bitbuckets, all areas that, as again, information security, information technology leaders, that we need to be having conversations with our community of users about. And finally, I'll wrap because Neil is traveling today. I'll share his contact information here before we open this up for questions or any additional comments, Tarquin, if you have. But Neil runs sales for us in EMEA. He's based in London. And again, he's apologetic that he wasn't able to be here with you today. We moved this around. So again, appreciate the fact that you've been able to join us today. And again, I hope that Neil can help you if you've got very specific questions.
You talked about edge, software that's on the edge, software as a service that's on the edge of I presume, the edge of your network. And we have noticed that certainly some of the state actors are now using techniques like living on the edge to develop access into organizations. So how prevalent is that with applications such as QuickBooks or Bamboo, for example, Bamboo HR, for example?
Well, I mean, credential theft is credential theft. And I think we see it is, I mean, the list of upcoming talks that you've got kind of highlighted all the different variations, whether it was OT based or other components, right? Credential theft continues to be the highest risk to any organization. And one of the things that we look at is whether it's, and we talk about those edge SaaS applications because, Tarquin, they're not often controlled by IT, right? So they aren't part of a broader single sign-on approach. They're being leveraged by a particular development team inside of the business and create risk for the business. So they're highly prevalent. And again, they put the organization more broadly at risk because your users, and again, let's talk about data loss prevention for a second, right? I think we all had visions that DLP would make the world perfect, 15 years ago and actually capture the right data flows. But as data becomes, like oil is a resource, it's flowing everywhere into almost every application. So it's really, again, up to the information security team to establish a process by which you onboard those secondary or edge SaaS applications, and that you do have a proper credentialing for those SaaS applications. That's where the story starts. We're a little bit of your phase two. So if you guys haven't figured out onboarding and offboarding for core, secondary SaaS applications, I'd go solve that problem first before I'd solve the data protection problem, right? You've got to secure, who's accessing that data and where that data is going.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point, and I also think this element. I mean, what we sometimes refer to as shadow IT, stuff that's on your network that you don't know is there, that's been brought in with all the good intentions because it makes things efficient, but the IT department, which quite often doesn't have a cybersecurity component to it, but it is the only part that is the cybersecurity component, doesn't have actually complete control of what's going on within the network, and that's a real challenge.
That's exactly right. And again, this goes back to having the right tooling at a basic level. You think about your classics of, I think we've all experienced kind of the issues with asset and inventory management in the same vein. And this is not dissimilar. And what we want to do is have everyone begin to expand their mind to think of SaaS as another asset inside of the organization. Just if you were managing software licenses for Oracle or for Microsoft 365, again, you should be managing the licensure for the SaaS applications that are being deployed or used by your end users in your environment. So again, that's really where that assessment and that inventory component is from a step one, everyone should go through. And then you should have a prioritized path to securing and protecting those applications.
And the I suppose the other thing about it is that yes, we talk about control, we talk about access, but with SaaS, I mean, effectively, it's a third party that's in your network that you don't have overall control over, and yet it's saying, well, you know, the data that you put in is your responsibility. But what levels of protection do these SaaS operators have to protect that data?
Yeah,
Even it's your responsibility to put in the data, but you've got to know what the risks are when you're putting it into those particular platforms.
yeah, and that goes back to a risk management program that has, supply chain risk management built into your platform or into your compliance or risk program to, really again evaluate onboarding new providers. And so again, Tarquin, that's a great point, but that goes back to having a process. And if you don't have a process to onboard new applications into your environment, you're never going to win here. And that's part of the journey is establishing. And again, this is, I'll repeat it, and apologies for beating up on the point, but if you don't treat SaaS as an inventoried asset, you're never going to control it. And in this case,
Yeah.
if you build process around assessing what's in the environment on an ongoing basis, and this is part of the challenge with SaaS is it's so dynamic, and people can bring almost any application on board at any time, right? We talked about Canva, we talked about your WhatsApps, and the information that's being shared there. I'd give you another example. Think about, I bet a number of you know people in the private equity or venture capital markets, and if you were having let's say you were talking over dinner and writing down on a napkin the different mergers or acquisitions that you were talking about, and you decided to share that via picture over WhatsApp, right? Again, that data using large language models today, an LLM can look at that picture, translate that data, and identify that there's confidential data there and there's risk. And again, that's part of the new world that we're participating in that we should be paying attention to and starting to at least evaluate.
So, Stephen, I use the horrible acronyms of AI because everybody talks about it, and there's lots of people out there putting it on their businesses, even though
Yes.
potentially they don't have AI anywhere near their offering. But there's the point you make about the risk of putting data into LLMs and where that absolutely goes. I mean, this is a real problem with ChatGPT or with any of the generative AI capabilities.
Well, and Tarquin, I'd shout out. I've got good friends that run and I'll give them a little bit of a boost here. But if you guys are interested, go look at a company called Gnostic.ai, Knostic. But as we think about large language models and the concept of AI, for everyone out there that's a Microsoft 365 customer, think about Copilot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Start there, and if you want to play with your prompt engineering, go into Copilot and evaluate, start asking questions, right? And see what data you can get out of Copilot that's totally inappropriate for, say, a customer service rep to understand. So that classic of data, data access governance, or even in some veins, role-based access, those are things that are really challenged by AI today. And again, AI or ChatGPT, whatever flavor of LLM you might be using, is again, it's a SaaS application that your company is leveraging, and you need a process to onboard and manage the deployment of that application. And so, don't treat, say, QuickBooks or Sage any differently than you should treat ChatGPT, right? You need the same level of security and mental thought around the data that you're putting into a Sage, which again is your core financials. And again, are you out there actively protecting the data in that core financial data set? And that's the yes, no that should trigger a conversation around we need to think more thoughtfully about the data we're putting into these SaaS applications.
Because this is actually targeting your fundamentally important information to a business. I mean, the financials of a business are probably the bit that the business least wants to get into the public domain for very obvious reasons. And the same goes with, I guess, with privately identifiable information as well, and how that can leak through, particularly when businesses decide to use generative AI or other capabilities to enhance their understanding of the data that they've got. I mean, it is that bit of control. I mean, I'm particularly grateful to you saying continuously, you've got to have a process in place, because that's something, you know, that's one of the three stools of cybersecurity: people, process, and technology. We tend to focus a lot on the technology, but we don't focus it near enough on the process side.
Well, I often chuckle, we all get stuck in the world of thinking about the new widget as compared to what we actually have, which is where we need to start the journey. So establishing what we have in that inventory component, whether it's data or applications, is fundamental to then the process that we build around. And again, that discovery and inventory piece being the beginning, and then you've got the process around how do we manage that application. And if you aren't using, there's so many easy to use, cloud drift platforms or compliancy drift platforms that do onboarding and offboarding, frankly, that are surprisingly inexpensive these days. That it's important, I think, is, information security, information technology leaders, for us to do that homework and to put that basic process. And again, I'm not suggesting, Tarquin, that people go try and solve for everything, because we're never going to solve for everything, right? But prioritize the things you're going to go solve for. So if you're not, go, I put that slide up that kind of showed the basic SMB apps. I'm going the wrong way, but you think about these basic apps, you think about your HR SaaS applications, your financial SaaS applications, your core productivity SaaS applications. Those are the things to start with from that prioritization. Take the 80-20 rule here. Sure, Canva can be a risk, but I'd probably not start with Canva. I'd start with Microsoft 365 or your financial applications first.
Absolutely. And that brings it to a really good point, which is about risk management, which is, I mean, we try at times to try and boil the ocean, and what we need to do is figure out what are the critical pieces that could do real damage to our business.
Yeah.
And Olivia's just come through with a comment that was a really good, let me just see, because it just dropped off my screen, but that was a great analogy for organizations to look at SAGE and AI with the same data security lens. That takes some of the hype out of AI.
I mean, it does, right? Like, AI is cool because it does cool things, but holy moly, QuickBooks and Sage are almost just as cool as is Epicor or SAP, or any other kind of, EHR, if you're doing other kind of health records electronically here in the US, right? We see all of these things happen. And again, people think the LLM is the next big thing, and we've got to dedicate all this security. That's a little bit of the shiny object syndrome that I think we fall victim to in the information security world. Again, if we don't know where our data is and how we're managing that data, that's kind of our fundamental problem to start with. And that's where, again, you go back, and this is, you need tooling, admittedly, to evaluate kind of what SaaS your organization using. And that tooling can often be fairly impactful, right? To really understand the true SaaS estate, you're going to need an agent-based approach. There's some tools out there that do that work. I'll leave you all to go. There's a little bit of that Texas coming out in me, but I'll leave you all to go find, what those tools are for yourselves that may work in your environment. But, you need to establish what SaaS applications are being used that are, again, shadow IT type SaaS applications. We all talk about the wonders of BYOD and, all bring your own device, but we've lost control in so many ways that data flow is kind of, it's become the wild, wild west all over again, right? Where we don't have a Novell share where we've got a single admin password that we're all leveraging, or that the auditor wants to see back 20 years ago.
So, Stephen, that brings me on to probably the one more question, which is, sure. As you mentioned it, you talked about BYOD. I was a CISO once, and BYOD was an acronym I really didn't like particularly. Not the acronym itself, but the fact that I had to deal with it. But this goes to the problem. Is this exacerbated by the trend towards, which has happened ever since the pandemic, towards remote working and people continuing to work remotely? Has that expanded the attack surface in terms of SaaS applications as well?
Yeah, and I don't even know that I'd call it so much attack service as it is administration these days, right? So if you go back, this is the one that kind of shocks us, which is if you think about the average company having 137 SaaS applications within it, like how many of you have truly feel like you have a full review of the SaaS estate inside of your environment? And go back to the OneDrive example, right? Maybe you have a personal OneDrive that you access from your, your home laptop that you're using to access the corporate network on. That personal OneDrive is just as vulnerable and may have been set up inappropriately by, John, your CFO, who demands unlimited flexibility in his or her BYOD approach. So yeah, it's absolutely, since the pandemic and everybody's gone remote and they demand access to all the different levels of data, anywhere at any time. Now, I will say, there are organizations that do a good job of locking down those devices. But again, that it's the classic security conundrum of how much impact do I apply to the business? So, I think what people often fall back to is I want visibility of the data flows and threats. But think about your large data warehouses, Tarquin, right? What we're seeing now with Snowflake, and Databricks and these other giant aggregators of data flows that allow you to access all the data all the time from almost any application. And they want more, your end users want more access and more availability for that data. And again, I think it's up to you as the information security organization inside of your business to establish, go back to people, process, technology, the processes by which you onboard, establishing the supply chain risk associated with particular SaaS providers. So just like us, right? If you were to start leveraging our platform, you'd want to know, are we GDPR compliant? Do you have a SOC 2? How are you going through that security questionnaire with, end user or company A, B, or C? Again, these are all the core processes. But what we continue to see, Tarquin, is again, these secondary SaaS applications just simply not hitting the radar of the information security teams. And often because they don't control the licensure. Like this is something that strikes me. If you don't own the licensing associated with it, as the information technology team and the finance team owns it, and it's on, John, the CFO's credit card, and nobody really pays attention to it. Maybe they did some automated connection with a particular data set, or they're using it for analysis. You think at scale, tools like a Tableau certainly are going to be managed by the information technology team, but your smaller applications that may be doing unique work are often not. So that's that, I would go back to one of the other things, particularly procurement can be, in this case, information technology, information security's best friend, because they can help visualize what are the secondary applications that are being paid for by the business that, again, you may not have access to or control over.
But that is a really good point. And I think probably most people who've got big businesses or any business will realize that there's a real, sometimes a disconnect between the information technology teams and the procurement team, with them speaking different languages. And of course, procurement is in control of what comes in to the organization. But how often are procurement teams security savvy to figure out what the problems are that they're going to be buying in?
Yeah, and I think, again, Dr. Bosch, the vendor management component here in supply chain risk, it's a mixed bag, right? Because you will have obviously a known process. Most of you, if you've got a mature security organization, have a vendor management platform or program in place. But it's, again, that's the beginning of the solve there. The secondary is those applications that, again, simply are paid for by credit card that someone's loading. Think about how easily I can download the entire set of current transactions out of a HubSpot or a Salesforce and put that into a data model and ask questions of it, right? It's, again, that's where I think AI for a lot of folks has opened the eyes of sharing data in a high risk manner. But again, the LLM is not the only arbiter there, right? Or the only challenge. It's all of the other applications that people are using. And that's why I use Canva often, because I think of the finance team building their quarterly public, deck to present to investors. and they're using Canva to do it, and they have absolutely no security controls around it.
Fascinating. I mean, a brilliant talk, Stephen. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us at such an early hour of the morning.
What a wonderful day what a wonderful way to start the day, Tarquin. This
Fantastic.
is it. Those of you
I've
in the world,
certainly we kept our audience throughout that, and I've certainly enjoyed the conversation, and it's raised a load of questions to me, and it always comes back to that bit about convenience, doesn't it?
yes.
Unfortunately, and having as little grit as possible in the machine so that the business can keep on running, but at the same time you've got to be aware of the risks. Guys, please do show your appreciation to Stephen, not least because he got up at some ungodly hour to give this to us. I thought it was a great presentation. Of course, it will be in our library, and our members are more than happy to kind of come in and have a look at it. But it's definitely something to look at, because this is an area that is actually not going to go away. It's going to get more complicated. Stephen, I just say, I hope you have a great day. I hope you manage to get your kids up in time for school.
Well, thank you, Tarquin, and thank you to everyone that jumped in today. I hope everyone has a fantastic week ahead, and appreciate your time. And reach out to Neil or myself if you have questions. This is a topic we love and are passionate about, and want to make sure we educate not only our end users but partners out there in the marketplace. So appreciate everyone's attendance today.
Absolutely. And if anybody does want to get in touch with Stephen, please just drop us a line. There's for a more in-depth talk, and possibly a talk about how this impacts your specific organizations, we'd be more than happy to facilitate that. Stephen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tarquin. Everyone have a fantastic day.
See you, everybody. Have a good day.